Welcome to Season 2 of the Gym Plus Coffee podcast. Today's guest is a very important member to the Gym Plus Coffee community, so much so that she received the MVP, Most Valuable Player Award at the Gym Plus Coffee Make Life Richer Awards 2024. For those that don't know, June Curtin is an amazing human being. She's overcome such adversity in her life and has found her new calling in the sea. Her story has inspired and helped countless numbers of people who may be going through difficult situations. As if that wasn't enough, June has raised much needed funds for charity. In fact, she has raised over €200,000 for the Simon community over the last couple of years by completing 3 swims every day in the month of December. The sea is helping to heal June, and she is helping to heal others too. She's built up an incredible community of sea swimmers in Spanish Point, County Clare, which I have had the pleasure of meeting. If you're ever down in Spanish Point, they meet at 9:15 every morning, and everyone is welcome. Grab a coffee, sit back and relax, and enjoy the episode.
June, you're very welcome to the Gym Plus Coffee podcast. I'm absolutely delighted you're here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here.
I won't make a huge introduction for you because I'll ask you to tell your story, but I will say that you are the most recent winner of the Breakout Community Leader from the Gym Plus Coffee Awards last year. It was an amazing night. You spoke so well on the night, which was a really special, moment, for that whole evening, and it'll live long in my memory because it really just set the tone for exactly what we wanted the awards night to be. So thank you for that. But I'd love just to start. There'll be people listening that would be familiar with your story, and there'll be probably a large amount of people that won't know your story. So I'd love for you just to introduce yourself and tell us how the last few years have been.
Thank you so much. Well, my name is June Curtin, and I am the founder of Snámhaí Sásta. That's the Irish for Happy Swimmers, a community of swimmers who swim on Spanish Point Beach 7 days a week, 365 days a year in all weathers. And I founded Snámhaí Sásta after a very difficult time in my own life when I lost my husband to suicide. And I suppose the years that followed after my husband's suicide, all my time and energy I had put into caring for my children, and unfortunately I had neglected myself. And I suppose my children are my whole world, so I always thought if they were happy that I'd be fine too, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. And for a long time I neglected myself, and I only realised in the last, I'll be 5 years swimming this year, the importance of self-care and not serving from an empty cup, that I can't care for my children if I am not well myself. So I started sea swimming 5 years ago, and I have never looked back.
Wow, that's amazing. 7 days a week, and we'll definitely get into that later about the endeavour that you took on in December of last year. Can you talk, just before we get into the starting of Snámhaí Sásta, just, you mentioned that empty cup, those years before you actually started swimming, what was going on there, and I suppose how did you come to that realization moment? Not exactly what you knew you're going to do, but that you needed to do something.
Yeah, I knew, I suppose, I needed help, first of all. After losing my husband to suicide, and my family were a huge support to me. I have a great family. My mother is alive, my father is passed on, and I have a brother and sister, and they were a huge support. And I suppose when I started to struggle myself, because I was caring for 2 children and a very troubled teen who had never accepted what happened to his dad and found it very difficult, all my time and energy went into looking after him, and I put myself last. And I suppose I realised after a number of years, when I had almost hit rock bottom myself, that I too needed help, and the bravest thing I could do was ask, and I suppose tell my family that I too was struggling.
And was that like how difficult was that to actually
Very difficult,
put a
but it
full
was,
stop on it and say, I need help?
yes, and it was a turning point for me, I suppose, too, you know, to be able to say, I'm struggling here and I don't know what to do.
And was it
I had tried like all forms of exercise, you know.
okay?
I had gone to the gym and I had done yoga, I had done mindfulness, I'd done lots of different things, but nothing seemed to work for me.
And was it because you couldn't stay with it because it didn't interest you, or you were just like, I'm not getting anything out of this, you know?
Well, I both. I couldn't stay with it, and I didn't feel I was getting anything from it either. Funny enough, and I've brought up by the sea all my life, and
So you're a swimmer. You're a passionate swimmer.
well,
You've been a passionate swimmer for decades.
I couldn't swim. This is the this is the funny thing. I couldn't swim, and 5 years ago, as I say, I'll be swimming 5 years in June. But I one morning I was having coffee with my mum, and I was looking out at the ocean, and I said maybe I'll go for a swim tomorrow. And just I had heard lots of people talking about the benefits of sea swimming. And I decided I would go the following morning down to the beach. But of course, it's only a dip because at that time I couldn't swim. And I remember getting into the water, and I always say to people, it's almost like I left my troubles on the shoreline that morning. And all I could think about was surviving the waves coming at me at that very moment, because it was the waves were powerful that morning. And got into the water, and I think I cried for probably 15 minutes.
Wow.
And
Just a complete release, obviously.
a complete release, and I came out of the water a different person that morning. And I think from that morning to this, I've never looked back. And now I make time and I carve out 10, 15 minutes out of my day for me, and then I'm better able to take on whatever comes at me at any given day, because I've had my morning swim and I've had my reset, and the cold brings the calm almost, you know, and I come out there. And there were many days where it's hard in the depths of winter. Spanish Point Beach on the west coast of Ireland, it's bleak and miserable, and you're sitting in a warm car with a heated seat
And a fogged up window.
And you have to brave the elements and get into the sea. But I always have to remind myself on the days I'm not feeling it, how I feel when I come out of the water. And I'm a different person after my swim.
Those are the days that you probably do need
Yeah,
to go out there.
the days that I don't want to get in are the days I have to push myself to do it.
June, you mentioned that you tried a number of things, you know, whether it be yoga or going to the gym or out for a walk or a run. What was it about the sea, or what was it about swimming that it just stuck for you and it felt like a different experience?
It was the power of the sea, I think, and the fact that you're immersing yourself in freezing cold water. And I had, as I said earlier, I had no time to think of anything, only surviving the waves coming at me at that very moment. And I just come out of the water every morning a different person to the person that walked into the water. I feel like it's a complete reset.
I suppose for different people it will be different. You know, some people say they get that runner's high, or some people say they have that spiritual feeling when they're doing yoga. But then for others, then it's that connection with the sea.
For my brother, who is a hotelier, it's climbing mountains. That's his thing, and the endurance of that. He summited Mount Everest after 10 years preparing, and that's his thing. And I suppose the sea is mine, and it's being outdoors, being in nature. And on the wettest day of the year is probably the day I enjoy the most. You know, you're sitting in your car and the rain is hopping off the window, but the minute I get out of the car, I feel so good.
And that first morning you went in, were you on your own, and were you kind of aware when you came out of the water how important this was going to be going forward, or was it more this was great in that moment, or were you kind of, it was like this is now going to be a thing for me for a long time?
Yeah, I was on my own firstly, but I knew there and then that this was going to be a thing for me actually. But I also knew that if I didn't put it out there and maybe tell people I was doing it and get some people to join me, that I may not commit to going every day on my own. So at that time, all I had was a Facebook account, and I put a post on Facebook that night saying that I was going for a swim the following morning, if anybody would like to join me. And there was a local woman in Spanish Point, and her husband saw my Facebook post, and he said it to his wife. He said, June is going for a swim in the morning, would you not join her? So on day 2, I had a local woman called Mary join me, and from that day to this, I've never looked back. It's grown wings, and
it's grown to mad numbers.
Mad numbers.
Yeah.
They come from the 4 corners of Ireland and further afield to join me. And it's amazing to watch how it's grown, actually, and to see all the new faces appearing and the excitement of them coming to do their first Novi Sasta.
Absolutely. And we were lucky to join you in Port Marnock Beach. I think. Was it last April or May?
Yeah, no, that was very special.
Yeah, and you were amazing to host us that day, and we brought the 8 members from the project, the crew that we had.
Yeah.
And it was a really nice day, and then it started bucketing down rain, and then we all got in the water and we started singing country music. We had a
country music disco on the beach in the rain. We did Ring a Ring a Rosie in the water. It's like sometimes it's like you revert back to your childhood.
Absolutely.
You know,
I remember
carefree and happy.
It was definitely a kind of an out-of-body experience because you throw in the cold. But I remember just how much fun it was, and
dancing to Daniel O'Donnell on a beach in
Dublin.
Dublin.
It sounds crazy now, but it was unique at the time.
If you haven't experienced it, I think it's a must.
It absolutely is, and I suppose that is going to be the hard thing of this conversation for the next 3 or 4 minutes, because I've been there, I've experienced it, I've witnessed it, I know what you have created, and I know kind of the heart of that community. But for the people who've never gone to a Novi Sasta event or haven't been to, Spanish Point, how would you describe it? What is that feeling? What is that typical morning like? How many people are there? What's the atmosphere like?
There's a great sense of community, I think, about Novi Sasta, whether we travel the beaches of Ireland or whether people come to Spanish Point Beach. I think there's a very warm welcome and, as I say, a great sense of community, And often there are very quiet days. One morning last week there were 3 of us in the water. Every day is different. The summertime it's really busy. My own community find the summertime, they much prefer the winter time, because in summertime it's so busy and so many people coming to join, and they much prefer it in the quieter times, but it's great. It's very special.
And as you said, people are coming from all different
parts. They come from the 4 corners of Ireland, and I think the lovely thing about Novi Sasta is that all the smiling, happy faces. I think everybody's happy, and there's no judgment, because everybody has a story.
Absolutely.
Nobody escapes this life without walking a step in pain, I think. And when you realise that, it makes you a lot more empathetic and less judgmental, maybe.
Yeah, and like you have your story, which is your story, but unfortunately in Ireland it's probably not a unique story. But there are other people that are going through so many other things, and what I was struck by was that everyone comes for like this celebration, this atmosphere, but as you said, there's no judgment, but there's also no let's talk through these issues. It's just your own issues are your own issues. We're coming here for fun, for getting together, for sharing ham sandwiches.
If people want to talk or share a story, they're more than welcome to, but there's no expectation. Yeah, which is nice.
There must be like hundreds of stories, I'm sure, of differences that you've made in people's lives, the impact that you've had. One, I suppose, how does that make you feel? Knowing that those people are coming because of a message and a story that you're spreading, and how do you interact with those people when they arrive? It must be slightly odd. I'm sure it's very kind of motivating for you, but it must be kind of slightly odd as well.
I suppose when I started out, I always said if I could help just one person, my job was done. And I hope that I have helped many people along the way. I like to think I have. And I always try and help where I can. And it's a little overwhelming, I suppose, when somebody has travelled from Donegal, for example, all the way to Spanish Point to join me for a swim. They've been following me on Instagram, and they want to share their story with me. And I feel very privileged, I suppose, that people feel they can open up to me. I'm not trained in any way to be a counsellor, but I always say I offer a listening ear without judgment, and I suppose that is huge for some people who want to share a story with you. And life is hard for so many people. I had a lovely couple join me about 3 years ago who lost their son to suicide. They had seen an article about me in the Sunday Independent Life magazine, and they had travelled to Spanish Point to join me for a swim, a beautiful couple. And they had lost a very young son. He wasn't even 21 to suicide, and they were absolutely broken. And they walked into the water that morning, and I remember the poor husband almost carrying his wife out of the sea. She could hardly stand. And it was probably one of the hardest days of my life on the beach that morning. That couple, they were so broken. And they came out of the water and they felt so good, having had their swim. And we went for a cup of tea and a chat, and they were able to talk and share their story and talk about their son. And they come on a regular basis now. We've become great friends.
What advice would you have for people that are in just they're in just that tricky situation at the moment, and maybe they can't figure it out right now? Is there any advice that you have for those people?
It's to reach out to somebody. There's always somebody willing to listen, I think, whether it's a family member or a friend or somebody in your workplace maybe. It's to know your people and to find that person and to lean on them, and just don't be afraid to reach out. And I think you become your best self when you work on the things that people can't take away from you, like your mindset, your character, your integrity, your grit, authenticity, and kindness, and just to work on yourself every day and keep putting one foot in front of the other.
I hope you're enjoying the episode. Just to let you know, we have a special discount code for podcast listeners. If you go to our website and enter POD15, you will get 15% off. That's POD15 for 15% off on all Gym Plus Coffee websites. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify or wherever you normally get your podcasts, and turn on that notification button so you never miss an episode. Now let's get back to the chat.
So this community now of happy swimmers,
Yep.
It's grown to unbelievable numbers. You really do have this army of people that are following you online. But you've kind of taken it an extra step over the last couple of years, which kind of culminated, I think, in December in a way. But would you explain to people, I suppose, the different kind of charity elements of this over the last couple of years, but then more specifically, I suppose, what did you decide to do in December, and your latest adventure that you've embarked on?
Well, I suppose I like to be able to give back where possible, and I think I have grown a following of over 30,000, which is not a massive following.
Not insignificant.
But it's not insignificant, and it's enough to be able to make a little bit of a difference and to make an impact where possible, maybe helping those a little less fortunate. I always fundraise every December for the Midwest Simon community, for those who are homeless and those on the brink of homelessness. And I embark on a mammoth challenge of 3 swims a day for 3 weeks in December, from the 1st of December to the 21st of December. So I get into the sea at 9:15 1:15 and 4:15 every day, 63 swims in 21 days.
Wow. So you chose the nicest month of the year.
Nicest month of the year. My own community said that to me. Please, this year, can you consider doing it in June or July? But sometimes I think unless you're undergoing a little bit of hardship.
Yeah. How was it? Like, was it as challenging as you?
Absolutely, mentally and physically very challenging, and fundraising is hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's sometimes it sounds easy. I'd set myself a target of €200,000 initially. My first year, I had set a target of €50,000, and I raised that, and I decided to up the ante last year and go for 100,000, and I raised in excess of €106,000 maybe.
Wow.
And then this year I had decided that we would go for €200,000, and I think I was having an outer body experience or something when I set that target, because when I started on the 1st of December, I remember that morning sitting in my car thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Anyway, I didn't reach my target, but that wasn't the end of the world. I still raised about 110,000, I think.
That's amazing.
All the money isn't in yet, but for the Simon community, for their plan is for a social grocery in County Clare, which is like a closed supermarket for the homeless. So it will eliminate the black bag and the queuing at a food bank and the shame around that. So that's
project,
that's the plan for the money.
Wow. Well, congrats. That's an
Thank you
absolutely
so
amazing
much.
impact to have. This is, I suppose, a bit more of maybe a challenging question, but there will be people listening that your story will resonate with them in their own way, of course.
Yep.
What advice would you have for people in broader terms, let's say? What advice would you have for someone who's going through like a challenging time? Could be, the one you faced now years ago, or some of the more recent challenges I'm sure that you've had. What advice would you have for them to get going, I suppose? Because that is a few minutes ago we spoke about that point where you put a full stop on something and you looked for help or looked for a solution. What advice would you have for people who they just need that? They need that step change.
It's, I suppose, the biggest lesson I learned is that everybody has a story and that you're not alone. Sometimes it can be very isolating. If you're struggling and you're not talking, the bravest thing you can do is ask for help, and it's getting up every day, putting one foot in front of the other. Sometimes 1 day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time, and sometimes even 1 minute at a time. It's just that you keep moving forward and that you talk to the right people and surround yourself with the right people. Know your people.
And that's where community comes in.
That's where community comes in, and the importance of community. I have an incredible community, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do without them. And they are the backbone of everything I do, and I never take that for granted. I have a great crew behind me, and you've seen them. Ian has seen them. He has been lucky enough to swim with us on Spanish Point Beach, and he can testament to that.
Ian's the guy who introduces the podcast.
Yeah.
Behind the camera.
Behind the camera.
Behind the microphone.
He's the good man behind the camera.
2 last questions. What is next for June Curtin, and what is next for Snovy Sausta? What does 2024 look like?
Snovy Sausta will go global.
Brilliant.
Well, yes, I would like to do a lot more travelling with Snovy Sausta. The beaches of Ireland and even further afield, hopefully promoting the benefits of sea swimming, the importance of mental health awareness, the importance of community and reaching out. So I would like to do a lot more travelling with Snovy Sausta, and maybe another Gym Plus Coffee sea swim. We could make a plan to do that as well. That was phenomenal in Portmarnock, I think.
Yeah, it was a serious impact on all of the people there, and yeah, we would love to do it again. Maybe not in December, but
Maybe not in December, no.
Last question for me, and it's something that we ask everyone that comes on the podcast. Gym Plus Coffee was built around that idea to make life richer, and those words can mean so many different things to different people. But when you hear that phrase, those words, what starts ringing in your head when you hear that? What do those words mean to you?
Well, I suppose the things that make life richer for me are always the simple things in life. And don't get me wrong, I love nice things, but family is my number one always. I think it's the backbone of everything I do. My whole world, my children are my entire world, 20 and almost 16. And I'm so blessed to have two beautiful children, considering all we've been through. And my community, I have an amazing community, and kindness is huge for me. It's the beginning and the end of everything. I think it's so important, and the power of kindness and being kind. I think, yeah, we should never underestimate the power of kindness and offering a listening ear.
Love that. June, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
And we look forward to joining you at a Snovy Sauce to get together this year.
Yes, we'll make a plan.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Gym Plus Coffee podcast. If you enjoyed these conversations, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or wherever you normally get your podcasts. And turn on that notification button so you never miss an episode. Don't forget we have a special discount code for podcast listeners. Go to our website and enter POD15 for 15% off. That's POD15 for 15% off on all Gym Plus Coffee websites. Thanks for listening.